So there's lots of different names for different presentations in the literature. If it's anxious-ambivalent, then you're really talking more about anxiously attached. If it is, sometimes people say anxious-avoidant, you're talking disorganized or fearful avoidant. If you are, some people call it disordered attachment. Names are so bad. And then there's anxious, preoccupied, anxious, ambivalent, anxious attachment. I tend to perceive anxious, preoccupied, and anxious, ambivalent as just varying degrees of anxious attachment. So if you're anxious, preoccupied, you're like, I need it. I want it now. I don't care if it look needy. Who gives a fuck if I look needy? I don't care. I want it. I need it. I'm getting it now. And I'm going to reach for it. And I'm going to do what it takes to get it. If you're anxious, ambivalent, inside, you feel, I need it. I want it. This sucks. And then there will be a part that steps in and says, but if I express that neediness, they're not going to want me. My mystery will be gone. I need to maintain this cool look so that they want me again. I can't sacrifice my power by looking needy. So to me, this is more anxious ambivalent. And so now they're anxious ambivalent folks may also have the insight to know that a relationship is not good for them, but they're so anxious they can't let go of it. So they settle. These are folks who tend to settle a lot, I find. And then when we look at ambivalence as becoming so extreme that we're moving into the fearful avoidant category, where it's more intense, there's no way to find safety, and then they may switch into dissociation or numbing out, which is how they escape it. I'm playing with this new way of explaining attachment styles, which seems to be helpful to people. So when you think of attachment styles, I'd have you think of them as nervous system responses. And what it means is, so attachment's all about proximity. So proximity means that there's a certain amount of distance that you need between yourself and an attachment person, figure, loved one, that you require in order to feel safe in relationship to them. So let's say that this is the amount of space that you require to feel safe with someone. Now, if you attract people into your experience who feel safer over here, what are you going to do? You're going to move towards them to recreate the distance that you like, right? So now as you move in this direction, you're going to look anxious because you're reaching out, you're initiating, you're asking what's going on, you're closing the gap between you. So now we call that anxious. Okay, now let's say the same person who likes this degree of space, right? Moving towards. Now let's say they meet someone new. And this person, instead of being, let's say, the more avoidant, emotionally unavailable person that they're typically attracted to, let's say this person's more anxious themselves, in fact, more anxious than you. And they like it right here. Oh, well, all of a sudden, you, who has historically been anxious to this point, finds yourself moving backward. Now you find yourself being like, oh, I don't know if I like that so much. That feels a little too much. But you have a problem because you know how it feels when someone moves away. And now you're overly identified with them. And so you will pull away and you'll worry that, oh, I've become avoidant, or you will stick it out because you over empathize with them and start crossing your own boundaries. And this doesn't feel good. And so then there's something happens there that will become explosive at some point or implode at some point. Now, but let's say you move away. Now you look like the avoidant one, right? Because you're moving away. But there's a consistent thing there, which is this is the degree of safety you're trying to maintain. There's consistency there. So this is why when we think about people who are anxious or avoidant, they're just going like this. And sometimes I'm this, sometimes I'm that. My attachment style depends on my partner. It's actually, there's usually a degree of consistency going on. You're just maintaining this degree, whatever way you're moving, okay? Healing the attachment style usually means that whomever you're encountering, that instead of you doing this to maintain safety, you let them do this, and your safety evolves from something internal instead. And so you can negotiate this process a little bit more intentionally. Like you're not just responding to what this person is doing. You're making more conscious choices about, am I going to stand still, let them go and come back? am I going to move towards because there's something in here that feels like I should be moving towards, or like that would be of service to me in this relationship? It's not that you should, it's not that there's a right or wrong way to do this, but that you just feel more intentional with this and you feel less pushed around by what's going on over here. Now, this is the thing that's different with fearful avoidance. With anxious or avoidant, this is usually consistent, the amount of space that they feel good with. With someone who's fearful avoidant, it's inconsistent. They don't know. Sometimes this feels safe, sometimes this feels safe, sometimes that feels safe, sometimes this feels safe. This feels safe right now, that feels safe tomorrow. Okay. So this is where I'm hoping that this clears up some of that confusion, is that when we find ourselves on that anxious avoidant spectrum, I feel anxious now, I feel avoidant. Am I disorganized? It depends. Are you maintaining a consistent distance and you're just doing it this way or that way right now? Or do you actually feel like this? You don't know. So it's a level, that's why I say attachment wounds are self wounds, because when you know, when this is fairly consistent, whether you're pushing or pulling, it's ego structure. There's more ego structure there. And the ego has decided this is safe and it's sure of it. Okay. When you don't know what's safe at all, and it changes consistently, there's less of a foundational ego structure there. So that's why the primary growth challenge for someone with fearful avoidance is to develop that sense of self first. There's some skill building involved here. And so the result is they also experience reduced hypersensitivity to others, yes, but primarily to their own inner critic. Because for the fearful avoidant partner, these are the folks that are, let's say, they struggle the most with letting love in once it shows up, right? So we can have the partner, the conditions, the environment, everything is curated just so. But now there is the issue of letting it in. And fearful avoidant folks probably struggle the most with that. And it's because they have an internalized inner critic. And usually the inner critic is a substitute teacher, right? The inner critic is acting in place of the self, which means it's a good survivor, which means it had gifts to offer. But that's why the growth challenge for the fearful avoidant is to ultimately supplant the inner critic with the spiritual self, the essence of self, the sovereign self, right? A stronger, more flexible ego. And that begins with self-compassion. You have to create space for it to be okay to explore the self. Kind of goes back to our first question, right? How do I recover from narcissistic abuse? Recover the self. And it's likely that, and this is often why a lot of times we have fearful avoidant folks who have experienced narcissistic abuse. And that's why they're fearful avoidant, because either they came from a narcissistic upbringing, which didn't allow them to have a self to begin with, and it was supplanted by a projected inner critic. They found themselves in a narcissistic dynamic, which just reinforced some of those underlying narratives that keep us sacrificing ourselves in search of safety. And so their primary growth challenge is working with that inner critic in the inner space and letting go of other people's expectations. And that's going to allow them to relax inside their own bodies and soften, which will allow them to relax and soften and open up and allow love in and trust that they deserve it, right? And that gives them the chance to experience more emotional stability inside and then more emotional stability in the relationship.